I never thought a single piece of paper could destroy the way I saw someone, but that's exactly what happened. My name is Margaret Hayes, and this story begins on a quiet morning, the kind that feels harmless until it isn't, the kind that tricks you into believing life is steady, safe, predictable. I didn't know my world was already cracking beneath the surface. When my son Daniel brought home the woman he wanted to marry, I tried my best to be welcoming. Her name was Emily Carter, and she walked into my life with a softness I didn't know how to resist. She had a gentle laugh, a delicate voice, and a way of tilting her head that made her look genuinely caring. I wanted to love her like a daughter. From the beginning, she treated me as if I were fragile. "Let me help you, Margaret," she would say, gently touching my arm. She brought me tea every morning, always just the way I liked it, warm, mild, and soothing. She listened intently whenever I spoke, nodding with that calm, patient smile. Looking back, that smile feels different now. Daniel adored her. He believed she was kindness wrapped in human form, and I wanted to believe it too. When he said they needed a place to stay for a while, I told them both to move in without hesitation. My home felt fuller, lighter, almost joyful. But sometimes joy is just a mask stretched over something darker. Little things began to pull at me, tugging at instincts I tried to ignore. The way she lingered at the doorway after I walked past, the way her eyes sharpened when Daniel wasn't looking, the way her words felt rehearsed, too perfectly placed, too perfectly warm. I brushed it off. I didn't want trouble, but trouble has a way of finding you, even when you hold your breath and pretend everything is fine. One evening, Emily told Daniel she wanted to reorganize the house to make things easier for me. Her voice was so sweet I almost agreed on the spot, but something inside me twisted, not painfully but firmly, like a warning. I politely declined. Her smile faltered for half a second, then it snapped back into place. Weeks went by, and her kindness only grew. She laid out breakfast before I woke up. She insisted on doing my laundry. She told neighbors I was like a second mother to her. Anyone watching would have thought she was an angel living under my roof, but I was beginning to notice the cracks. Her compliments had a strange aftertaste, like she was studying me rather than appreciating me. Her presence felt heavy, as if she was always 2 steps ahead of a conversation. And whenever Daniel entered the room, her entire demeanor shifted into exaggerated sweetness. A performance, one I had never auditioned for. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a quiet afternoon. Daniel was at work, and Emily had gone out to pick up a few things. I decided to tidy the guest room they shared. I wasn't snooping. I just needed something to focus on, something repetitive, something that kept my mind from wandering into suspicious territory. I should have left the room untouched. As I straightened the blanket, something white slipped out from under the pillow and fluttered gently to the floor. I bent down, expecting a receipt or a note from a friend, but when I picked it up, I felt my heart tighten. It was folded neatly, deliberately, almost ceremonially. My name was written on the front. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, in careful handwriting, was a list, a sequence of steps, a plan cold, methodical, and terrifying in its clarity. It detailed ways to shift Daniel's loyalty, ways to isolate me subtly, ways to gain access to the house, the assets, and eventually everything I owned. And then the final line, the one I still hear echoing inside me. Once she trusts us completely, everything becomes ours. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I stood there staring at the words, wishing they would rearrange themselves into something harmless, something silly, a misunderstanding, anything but what they were. But each sentence cut deeper than the last. Her kindness wasn't kindness, it was strategy. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the note burning in my hand, my thoughts scattering like frightened birds. Every smile she'd given me suddenly felt poisonous. Every gentle touch, every warm gesture, every soft-spoken word, they all snapped into a new horrifying shape. She hadn't come into my home for love. She had come with an agenda. I felt foolish, not because she fooled me, but because I wanted so badly to believe in her. I wanted peace. I wanted family. I wanted something I could hold on to after losing so much in life. But sometimes the people you welcome with open arms are the ones who walk in carrying knives. I read the note again, slower this time, feeling each word like a bruise forming beneath the skin. I thought about Daniel, my son, my only child, so deeply in love with a woman who saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone. My stomach twisted as I wondered how long she had been planning all this, how long she had been laughing behind my back. Eventually, I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, not to hide it, but to claim it. This was proof. This was truth. This was the moment everything shifted, and I wasn't going to let anyone bury it. As I walked out of the room, the house felt different, as if it knew something had finally been revealed, a secret ripped out from under the floorboards. And in that moment, I understood something unmistakable. The mask she wore had cracked, and I was going to see exactly what lay behind it. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note staring back at me. Those careful lines, those calculated steps, that cold final sentence that made my skin crawl. It felt like someone had reached into my life and rearranged everything I thought was real. I lay awake in the dark listening to the faint sounds of the house, every creak and whisper feeling heavier than usual. The quiet didn't comfort me anymore, felt watchful, as if the walls themselves knew what I discovered. I kept replaying moments with Emily, moments that now felt sinister. The time she accidentally asked Daniel about my savings, the time she suggested I should let them handle the bills, the time she gently encouraged me to rest more, move less, stay still. I thought she cared, but now I knew better. Morning came too quickly. I found myself in the kitchen, hands trembling as I prepared coffee. My mind raced, trying to decide what to do, what to say, how to breathe without breaking. The note felt heavy in my pocket, a truth I couldn't unknow. Then I heard footsteps. Emily walked in with that same gentle smile, as if she hadn't spent weeks plotting the slow dismantling of my life. She greeted me softly, the way she always did, her voice lilting with honey. Something inside me clenched. "Did you sleep well, Margaret?" she asked. I forced a small nod. I didn't trust myself to speak, not without my voice cracking under the weight of everything I now knew. She moved around the kitchen gracefully, humming a faint tune, pouring tea for herself. Watching her felt surreal, like observing a stranger wearing someone else's skin. She talked casually about her day, her plans, her errands. She didn't hesitate, not even once, because she didn't know. She didn't know I had seen her script. She didn't know the curtain had finally been pulled back. But I knew. When Daniel entered the kitchen moments later, he wrapped his arms around her. She leaned into him effortlessly, smiling up at him with soft devotion. My heart tightened, not from jealousy but from fear. Fear that he would be destroyed when he learned the truth. My son didn't deserve this. I watched them from across the room, feeling like an outsider in my own home. Every tender moment they shared looked different now, as if I could see the mechanics behind her expressions, the cold gears turning behind her smile. And still, Daniel touched her like she was the safest place on earth. I wanted to scream the truth right then, but I knew I couldn't, not yet. I needed proof beyond that note. Proof Daniel wouldn't question. Proof Emily couldn't twist. Cause someone like her, someone who planned so carefully, someone who wrote out steps like a strategist, she wouldn't crumble easily. The day passed slowly. Emily was attentive as ever, asking if I needed anything, offering help with chores, insisting on making lunch. Each gesture felt heavier, darker, and my chest tightened with every polite smile she gave. I played along because I had to. By the afternoon, I knew I needed space. I told them I wanted some air and stepped outside to the backyard. The wind felt cold against my skin, sharper than usual, but it grounded me. I leaned against the wooden railing and breathed deeply. That's when I made my decision. I would watch her, quietly, carefully, patiently. If she was planning something, her behavior would reveal more. People who believe they're smarter than everyone else eventually slip, and Emily believed she was brilliant. Over the next few days, I observed everything, every movement, every word, every glance, and the more I watched, the more the truth surfaced like oil rising to the top. She was subtle, yes, but she was also careless in small ways. I noticed how she checked Daniel's phone when he left the room, her expression cool and calculating. I noticed how she moved documents from one drawer to another, as if reorganizing, but only where financial papers were kept. I noticed how she encouraged Daniel to spend more evenings out to relax, subtly pushing him away from me. Little things, small things, but they stacked like bricks, forming a wall of truth. Then another moment happened, something small but revealing. Emily walked into my room one morning without knocking. She smiled softly when she saw me awake, but her eyes flicked quickly around the space, searching, scanning, taking inventory. It wasn't a daughter-in-law checking on her mother-in-law. It was a thief measuring the room she planned to empty. She didn't see the way I watched her, because she didn't expect me to look deeper now. She thought I was blind. A few days later, I overheard her whispering on the phone. She didn't know I was in the hallway. Her voice was low, sharp, nothing like the sweet tone she used with us. "I'm telling you, it's almost done," she said. "Just give me a little more time." My heartbeat thudded painfully. Almost done? Done with what? Her tone grew colder. "He trusts me completely. Once everything is settled, we can move forward." My blood ran cold. I stepped back before she noticed me and retreated into my room, my mind spinning. The note hadn't been an idle thought. It was active. It was ongoing. It was building. And Daniel, he was walking straight into a trap. I sat on my bed, gripping the edge tightly. The weight of everything she was plotting felt heavier than before. But fear wasn't the only thing growing now. Anger was growing too. Sharp anger. Protective anger. A kind of anger I didn't know I was still capable of feeling. She thought she could tear my life apart piece by piece. She thought she could manipulate my son. She thought she could steal everything I had ever worked for. But she had made one monumental mistake. She underestimated me, because the moment she wrote that note, she awakened a part of me she didn't expect, and she was about to learn what happens when the wrong woman is pushed too far. The next morning felt heavier than the last. I woke before sunrise, lying still in the dim light, listening to the quiet breathing of the house. I waited, almost expecting something to break the silence. A voice, a sound, a warning. But nothing came. Silence has a way of becoming its own kind of threat. I moved slowly, careful not to wake anyone. My thoughts were sharp, cold, and far too focused for someone who hadn't slept properly in days. I wasn't panicking anymore. I wasn't shaking. Something inside me had shifted into place. I stepped into the hallway and paused. Emily's door was closed. Daniel's soft snore drifted faintly through the air. For a moment, I let myself breathe, letting the early morning stillness settle against my skin. But calm is fragile. As I walked toward the kitchen, I knew I needed a plan. Not just suspicion, not just anger, but a strategy as precise as the one she had written. She had outlines, steps, an agenda, so I needed my own. I brewed myself coffee, letting the slow, steady drip steady my heartbeat. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and stared out the window, watching the sky shift from gray to soft gold. That was when I realized something. Emily wasn't attacking me directly. Not yet. She was dismantling me quietly, bit by bit, inch by inch, until I wouldn't know how to stand for myself. That note wasn't just a plan. It was a timeline, and she had already begun. I took out the folded paper again, smoothing its edges with trembling fingers. Reading it in daylight made the words feel even colder. Control the finances, shift loyalty, create dependence, secure ownership. There was nothing warm in her handwriting, nothing soft, nothing human. I knew then that I needed proof beyond my word and hers. Proof that wouldn't crumble under her rehearsed sweetness. Proof Daniel couldn't ignore, because she would twist everything if she had the chance. Later that morning, I approached the guest room door. My heart thudded, but my mind was calm. I wasn't going in to snoop. I was going in to protect myself, to understand her better, to anticipate her moves. But the moment my hand touched the doorknob, it turned. The door swung open from the inside. Emily stood there, her eyes widened just a little. Not with surprise, no. Something else. Something calculating. As if she had been expecting someone. Maybe me. "Good morning, Margaret," she said softly. "Is everything okay?" Her voice was calm, perfectly measured, like she'd rehearsed the line 100 times. The sunlight spilled across her face, highlighting an expression that was too smooth, too steady. She was masking something. I felt it. "I was just checking if you needed towels," I said evenly. Her smile was soft, sweet, perfectly shaped. "Thank you. You're so thoughtful." The words sounded harmless, but her eyes lingered on me for a second too long, studying, reading, measuring, and I knew she sensed something was different. I stepped back to let her pass. She moved gracefully down the hall, humming faintly, but something about that humming, it felt victorious, almost arrogant. The moment she was out of sight, I inhaled deeply and pushed open the guest room door. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but I needed to know what she was preparing, what she might be hiding. But the room felt colder than before. Her suitcases were neatly organized. Her clothes were folded perfectly. Her makeup was arranged with military precision along the dresser. Everything was immaculate, too immaculate, as if she expected someone to look, and that alone made my skin prickle. I checked the nightstand, empty, the drawers, neat, the closet, untouched, but then my gaze drifted to the desk. A single notebook lay open, a pen resting across the page. At first glance, it looked like a simple planner, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Her handwriting. I moved closer, slowly, carefully. There were dates listed, times, short notes beside them. Ask Daniel about insurance. Encourage her to rest earlier. Move bills into joint access. Call. The rest was scribbled out. A shiver crawled up my spine. This wasn't just planning. This was monitoring, tracking, adjusting. She was keeping score of her manipulation. I closed the notebook, my pulse pounding. This was more proof, but still not enough. Emily was clever. She would twist this into something innocent, something helpful, something charitable. I needed undeniable evidence. Evidence that spoke louder than her pretty smile. As I stepped out of the room, I nearly collided with her again. She stood still this time, silent, watching me. Her smile was different, tighter, stretched just a little too far, like she was testing it. "Did you find what you needed?" she asked. Her tone was polite, but her eyes were sharp. I held her gaze. Yes. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air felt dense between us, thick with unspoken truths. Her expression didn't waver, but I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Something alert, something aware. She knew I was changing, and I knew she was watching. We walked to the kitchen together, but neither of us spoke. She moved with her usual grace, but her shoulders were still rigid, controlled. I could feel her thinking, adjusting, like she was rewriting her plan in real time. She was dangerous when quiet. Daniel joined us minutes later, cheerful and oblivious. He kissed her cheek, then hugged me. He was warmth in a world that suddenly felt cold. But Emily watched us closely. Her eyes lingered on the space between us, on the bond she had planned to break. My heart tightened as I watched her expression soften soften into that familiar, practiced sweetness when he turned toward her. She was an actress, committed one, and Daniel was lying to the performance. I knew then I couldn't rely on conversation. Not yet, not without more evidence, because confronting a liar without proof doesn't reveal the truth. It strengthens their lies. So I played along. I smiled when I needed to. I nodded when expected. I sat beside her at dinner and acted as though nothing had changed. But inside me, something solid had formed. A resolve, plan of my own, a quiet promise that I would not let her take my son or my home. And I knew exactly where to begin. I would expose her, piece by piece, lie by lie, until her mask didn't just crack, it shattered, because she wasn't the only one capable of strategy, and I was just getting started. I didn't realize how exhausting it was to pretend until the pretending became my daily routine. Every smile I gave Emily felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. Every conversation felt like a test I hadn't studied for, but I had no choice. Not yet. I spent the next few days watching her quietly, waiting for the slip, the moment her guard would falter. She was good. I'll give her that. Her sweetness never cracked in front of Daniel. Her smile never dimmed. Her voice never hardened. But her eyes told the truth. They were always moving, always calculating, always measuring where she stood in the quiet war she didn't know I had already entered. One afternoon, the moment I had been waiting for came in the most unexpected way. Daniel had gone to work, and Emily said she needed to run a few errands. She left the house with her usual softness, her usual wave, her usual gentle tone, but something in her posture felt different, stronger, more confident, as if she was getting closer to something. The second the door clicked shut, an uneasy feeling tugged at me. It wasn't suspicion, it was instinct, and instinct doesn't lie. I moved to the living room and sat on the couch listening, waiting, focusing on the silence the way a hunter listens for the faintest rustle of prey. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. Too long for simple errands, too quick for a planned lunch or a friend visit, but perfect timing for a meeting, a secret one. My heart beat harder as I walked to the front window. The street lay quiet, shimmering faintly under the afternoon sun. I scanned the sidewalks, the driveways, the parked cars, and then I saw her, not walking toward town, not heading to a store, not going to meet a friend. She was climbing into a black sedan parked 2 houses down. The driver stepped out briefly, a man I didn't recognize. He didn't look like family. He didn't look like a coworker. He looked like someone hired to stay invisible. Emily slid inside, her expression shifting the moment she thought no one was watching. Her soft smile melted away. Her face hardened, focused, sharp. The car pulled away slowly, casually, as if it had no reason to be noticed. But I noticed, and the moment it disappeared around the corner, so did whatever patience I had left. I grabbed my coat. I wasn't going to follow her, not yet, but I needed answers, and I suddenly knew exactly where to find them. Daniel kept all his paperwork in a locked drawer in his office, the same drawer Emily had been reorganizing, helping, cleaning, managing with such suspicious frequency. I had never gone through his things. I respected him. I respected his life. But this wasn't about privacy anymore. This was about survival. I unlocked the drawer with a spare key he kept taped under the desk. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside, everything was arranged meticulously. Folders lined up, envelopes stacked, documents sorted so precisely it felt unnatural. I sifted through them slowly, searching for anything Emily might have touched, changed, or manipulated. And then I found it, a file labeled "Insurance Updated." My heart dropped. I opened it carefully, my eyes scanning each page until they fell on the part that made my blood run cold. The beneficiary had been changed, not replaced entirely, just rearranged. Daniel was listed as primary, but a secondary name had been added just a month ago. Emily Carter. My breath caught painfully. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't unusual for a spouse to be listed, but the timing, the secrecy, the manipulation behind it. She wasn't planning to take my home first. She was planning to secure something far more dangerous. I closed the file, my mind spinning in dark circles. Insurance, finances, loyalty, dependence. Everything she wrote on that note was aligning like puzzle pieces, forming a picture I never wanted to see. I needed more. I dug deeper, searching through statements, bills, account updates. Each one showed small changes, subtle, easy to overlook, perfect in design. A billing address updated here. An online access code updated there. A shared account request submitted but not yet approved. A tightening noose, loop by loop, quiet and precise. When I stood up, my legs felt weak, not from fear, from rage so sharp it felt like it could cut through bone. She was building something behind our backs, something dangerous, something that could ruin us. And if she was this bold on paper, what was she planning in person? Hours passed before she returned. I heard the door open, then her light footsteps drifting into the hallway. She moved through the house humming again. I watched her from the dining table. She glanced at me. Her smile was warm. Her eyes were empty. "Did you rest today, Margaret?" she asked sweetly. Rest. That word again. Every time she wanted to distract me, she used it like a command. I nodded because I couldn't trust myself to speak. She didn't know I had seen everything she touched. She didn't know I had discovered changes she thought were invisible. She didn't know I had reached the point I could never return from. Dinner that night felt like a play with only 2 actors aware of the script. Daniel laughed. Emily smiled. I watched. The moment dinner ended, I reached for my plate, only for Emily's hand to suddenly rest on mine. "Let me," she whispered gently. "You shouldn't strain yourself." The contact sent a cold shock through me. Her fingers were warm. Her tone was tender, but everything inside me recoiled. I pulled my hand back slowly. Her eyes flickered, just a fraction, but enough to confirm one thing. She felt a shift. She sensed the change. She knew something was different about me, but she didn't know why. Not yet. When I went to bed that night, one truth echoed in my mind like a heartbeat. She wasn't planning to take my home first, or my finances, or my independence. She was planning to take everything, and I was done waiting, because the next move would be mine. The next morning arrived with an unsettling stillness, not the peaceful kind, the kind that hangs heavy in the air, like the sky is holding its breath. And in a way, so was I. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a mug of steaming coffee, trying to calm the storm inside me. The house felt too quiet, too clean, too controlled. Everything in it whispered her name. Emily moved around the kitchen, humming as she prepared breakfast. Her movements were smooth, graceful, almost choreographed. She never made a sound she didn't want to make, never said a word she hadn't measured first. I watched her silently. Every time she opened a drawer, every time she touched a utensil, every time she glanced in my direction, I saw more of her true self. The woman she pretended to be had cracks now, small ones, but visible, and underneath that soft surface, there was steel. "Are you feeling okay today, Margaret?" she asked softly as she placed a plate in front of me. "Fine," I said. Her eyes lingered on my face, too long, too focused. She was searching for something: worry, confusion, weakness. She needed me fragile. When she didn't find it, her smile tightened a little. Daniel walked in moments later, cheerful and oblivious. He kissed her cheek, then greeted me with a warmth only a son can give. His presence was a reminder of everything I stood to lose, everything she stood to gain. As they talked, I watched Emily slip into her sweet wife persona effortlessly, laughing at his jokes, brushing his arm lightly, speaking in a soft tone made to melt hearts. She was good, dangerously good, but something was different today. Something in her eyes flickered with impatience, almost like she was waiting for a step in her plan to unfold. When Daniel left for work, she stood at the door waving until his car disappeared. Then the moment he turned the corner, her shoulders dropped, her smile fell, her face hardened, and she turned around slowly, too slowly, fixing her eyes on me. "I think we should talk," she said. Her tone was no longer sweet. My breath hitched for the smallest moment, not out of fear, out of readiness. "About what?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She walked to the dining table and sat down across from me, her fingers intertwined neatly, her posture poised. This wasn't Emily, the caring daughter-in-law. This was Emily, the strategist. "I feel like things have been tense," she said, "between us." I didn't answer, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. Still, I stayed quiet. She studied me carefully. "Is something bothering you, Margaret?" Everything in me wanted to say yes, but I wasn't going to hand her anything. "Not yet." "No," I said softly. Her eyes narrowed for just a second, so slight most people would have missed it, but I saw it. She didn't believe me, and her doubt was growing. "Good." She leaned forward slightly. "You know," she said, "it would really help me if you could trust me a little more. Let me do things for you. Let me take care of you." Every word of that sentence was a blade disguised as kindness. "I'm fine on my own," I replied quietly. She smiled again, slowly, tightly. "I know you think that." The arrogance in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. This was the closest I had seen to her true mask slipping, and I stored every second of it in my mind. She stood up abruptly. "Well," she said lightly, "I'll go get changed. Since you're feeling better, maybe we can run a few errands together." She left the room with her usual grace, but something about her steps felt sharper, quicker, more determined. The second she disappeared down the hallway, I closed my eyes and breathed slowly. She was probing me, testing me, trying to figure out what I knew, trying to see if her plan had leaked through a crack somewhere. And I realized something important. She wasn't confident. She was nervous. Her facade was still intact, but the ground beneath her had started to shift, and she could feel it. When she returned in her coat and scarf, she had her sweet expression back in place. "Ready to go?" she asked. I nodded, but I wasn't going to the store to shop. I was going to observe, to study, to learn her patterns. We drove into town in tense silence. Emily talked about recipes, grocery lists, weekend plans, but the tone was wrong. Too fast, too light, too eager. She was filling space with words the way liars fill gaps in their stories. Desperately, when we reached the store, she clung to my arm gently, keeping me close. Not out of affection, out of control. She watched everything I looked at, everything I touched, everything I didn't control. control. That was her entire foundation. While we stood in line, her phone buzzed. She read the message quickly, then turned her screen away from me. Her expression changed for a split second. A rise of tension, a flicker of annoyance, a spark of urgency. Then the mask returned. "Sorry," she whispered. "Just a friend." But the lie was too smooth. When we left the store, she walked faster than usual. Her pace was sharp, almost impatient, as if she were rushing to something or running from something. She didn't speak during the drive back. Not a single word. When we finally stepped inside the house, she turned to me suddenly. "Margaret," she said softly, "you would tell me if something was wrong, right?" I looked at her, right into the eyes of the woman who had come into my home with a smile and a plan. A woman who thought she could strip me of everything quietly. "Yes," I whispered, and I meant it, 'cause something was wrong. Everything was wrong, and she had no idea how close she was to losing everything she'd been building. I walked past her, leaving her standing in the entryway. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I had felt it. I had seen it. I had heard it in her voice, her steps, her breath. Emily was rattled, and a rattled liar is a dangerous liar. But a rattled liar also makes mistakes. Soon she would make one in front of me. After that day, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Even the walls seemed tense, as if they knew something was coming. And maybe they did. I woke early the next morning, earlier than usual, with a strange heaviness in my chest. Not fear, not anxiety, something sharper, something closer to readiness. I sat up in bed and listened. The house was silent. No footsteps, no drawers opening, no soft humming drifting through the halls. And strangely, no Emily. I slid out of bed and pulled on my robe, feeling the cool air press against my skin. As I walked into the hallway, I noticed something that made my pulse quicken. Her door was open, wide open. She never left her door open. I stepped inside slowly, expecting to feel the same staged neatness she always kept. But something was different this time. Her bags weren't in the same place. Her closet door was slightly ajar. The air felt unsettled. Something had changed. I glanced at the desk where her notebook had been. Today there was nothing there. No notebook, no pen, no sign of the careful tracking she'd been doing. She had moved things, rearranged things, hidden things. She was covering tracks. My heartbeat quickened. I stepped back and left the room, my mind racing. If she was hiding her notes, hiding her steps, hiding her plans, it meant only one thing. She sensed danger, and I was the danger. I walked into the kitchen, expecting to see her preparing breakfast, but instead I found a single piece of paper lying on the counter. A note for me. My stomach tightened as I read it. "Went out early. Groceries. Be back soon. Emily." It was written in her perfect, practiced handwriting. The same handwriting that had plotted my downfall. The same handwriting that had listed steps to take everything I owned. But this note was different. Short, cold, strategic. She wasn't running errands. She was moving pieces, and I needed to know exactly which ones. I grabbed my coat, stepped outside, and began walking toward the street. The morning air felt cold against my face, cutting through the fog that always clung to early hours. I wasn't planning to follow her, but I wanted to see where she had gone. The street was empty. No cars, no neighbors, just quiet. Then my eyes caught something. A black sedan turning the corner slowly. The same type of car she had gotten into before. It passed me casually, almost politely, but its presence made something in my chest tighten. I watched it disappear down the block before heading back inside. My instincts were screaming now. She wasn't buying groceries. She wasn't doing morning errands. She was meeting someone again. I stepped into the living room, my hands shaking not from fear, but from realization. If she was accelerating her plan, then I needed to accelerate mine. For weeks, I had been gathering fragments, small truths, small slips, small cracks in her story. I needed something bigger, something undeniable, something Daniel couldn't explain away. I walked to my bedroom, opened the drawer beside my nightstand, and retrieved a small notebook, my notebook. It was time to write my own list. Not a plan for manipulation, not a strategy for control, but a map of the truth. I wrote down everything I'd seen, every suspicious glance, every whispered phone call, every document altered, every interaction that revealed her true nature. As I wrote, the pieces began to connect. The insurance, the financial access, the dependence she wanted to build, the meetings, the secret notes, the lies wrapped in kindness, and then something else clicked. Everything she planned had one essential requirement: Daniel's trust. If she could keep him blind, she won. If she could turn him against me, she won. If she could make him believe I needed help, she won. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. A conversation Daniel and I had weeks ago. "I think Emily worries about you," he'd said gently. "She says you seem tired, maybe overwhelmed." At the time, I brushed it off. But now, that moment felt sinister. She had been planting seeds early, softly, quietly, cleverly, and maybe they were starting to grow. I closed my notebook, my hands trembling with a new kind of urgency. I needed to protect my son before she finished whatever she had started. But then the front door opened. My breath caught. She walked in carrying 2 grocery bags, light ones ones almost empty, and smiled as if nothing were wrong, but something in her eyes flickered. She was watching me, reading me, assessing me. "Good morning," she said sweetly. "You're up early." "So are you," I replied. For a moment her smile froze. Then she tilted her head. "I just wanted to make sure the house had everything we needed," she said warmly. The lie slipped from her tongue too easily. She moved toward the counter and began unpacking the bags. A single loaf of bread, a pack of tea, a bottle of milk, 3 items. For someone who claimed she was grocery shopping, she turned to me suddenly. "You seem different today, Margaret. Is everything all right?" I looked at her evenly. "Yes." She stepped closer. Too close. Her eyes softened, but her face stayed still. "You know you can talk to me," she whispered. "I care about you." I felt my stomach twist. Not from fear, from clarity. This woman didn't care about anyone. Not me. Not Daniel. Not this family. She cared about what she could gain. And the more I watched her, the more I realized something important. Her kindness had limits. Her sweetness had cracks. Her calm had shadows. And something in those shadows was beginning to stir. She was nervous. She was rushed. She was preparing for something. But what? Before I could think further, she placed a gentle hand on my arm. "Would you like me to make you some tea?" she asked softly. Her touch felt wrong. I pulled away, just a little, enough for her mask to tremble. She blinked, not in surprise, in calculation. In that moment I understood. She knew I was slipping out of her control. She felt it. She feared it. And someone like Emily, someone who thrives on manipulation, becomes unpredictable when they lose control, which meant one thing: something big was coming, and I had to be ready for it. For the rest of the day, I felt her watching me, not openly, not obviously, but in the quiet, careful way predators watch prey, waiting for the moment it stumbles. Every time I walked into a room, I felt her gaze flit toward me. Every time I moved, her posture shifted. Every time my eyes lifted, she looked away just a heartbeat too late. She wasn't pretending anymore. Not with me. The sweetness remained on the surface, but underneath, she was alert, coiled, ready, and I knew exactly why. She sensed she was losing control. By the evening, Daniel came home, cheerful as always, dropping his keys on the counter, greeting both of us with a warm smile. He didn't sense the tension. He didn't feel the crackling air. He didn't see the quiet war happening right in front of him. He walked over and hugged me, and for a moment I allowed myself to sink into that familiar warmth. But then I saw her. Emily stood behind him, smiling. Only her eyes moved, narrowing slightly as they locked onto mine. A silent message, warning, challenge. My stomach tightened, because in that moment I realized something important. She didn't just want my home. She didn't just want my assets. She didn't just want control. She wanted him, completely, exclusively, blindly. Dinner that night felt like sitting at a table with a loaded gun no one wanted to acknowledge. Daniel talked about work, about a project he was finishing, about how tired he felt. Emily nodded, chimed in, encouraged him, touched his arm gently. She played the perfect wife. She played the perfect partner. But she also watched me. When I lifted my fork, when I placed it down, when I reached for my glass, when I didn't speak, her eyes tracked everything. Eventually, Daniel excused himself to make a phone call. The moment he left the table, the air shifted. Her smile faded instantly. She leaned back slowly, her eyes locked on mine, cold now, sharp, unmasked. "You've been quiet today," she said. "So have you," I replied calmly. She tilted her head, studying me as if trying to see through my skin. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe we should talk about boundaries." Her voice was low, measured, too controlled. "What boundaries?" I asked. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Something dark. "Daniel and I were building a life together," she said softly. "A future. And sometimes it's hard for couples to do that when there are outside influences." Outside influences. That was me. She didn't even bother to hide it. I felt something inside me tighten. Not fear, not anger, but certainty. "What are you trying to say, Emily?" I asked. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "I just want us all to be comfortable," she murmured. "I want harmony in this home. For Daniel's sake." Harmony. Her favorite word. Her most dangerous weapon. Before I could respond, Daniel walked back into the room, breaking the moment. Emily instantly shifted back into her sweet, gentle persona, touching his arm, leaning her head on his shoulder. But I wasn't fooled, and I didn't think she cared about fooling me anymore. As the night went on, Daniel yawned and said he was heading to bed early. Emily followed him out of the room, but not before giving me one last look, and it wasn't a look of concern. It was a look of possession. When the house finally settled into silence, I didn't go to my room. I went to the living room instead, sitting down slowly, letting the quiet press around me. My thoughts spun like smoke. She was escalating. I felt it. I saw it. Something in her had shifted from patience to urgency, from calculation to action, from shadows to movement. Whatever she was planning, she wanted it soon. I needed answers. Real answers. Not guesses. Not instincts. I needed the truth she was hiding, and I knew where it might be. Her purse. It was the one thing she never left lying around. She kept it close guarded like it held her entire world. And maybe it did. Tonight, for the first time, she'd left it on the hallway table, probably distracted by her tension, her frustration, her need to control the situation. I stood up slowly. Every step toward that purse felt heavier than the last. Not because I feared what I might find, but because I feared confirming what I already knew. When I reached it, I hesitated only for a moment before opening it quietly. Inside, everything was arranged perfectly. A wallet, a compact mirror, a lipstick, a planner, and then something else. A folded paper. My heart dropped into my stomach. I pulled it out slowly. It wasn't just any paper. It was the same type, same size, same neat fold as the first note I'd found. My breath shook as I opened it. Inside were more steps, more instructions, more strategies. But these weren't about finances. These were about Daniel. I read each line with growing dread. Make him believe she's forgetting things. Suggest stress is affecting her clarity. Encourage him to handle important decisions. Subtle shifts, not obvious ones. Don't rush. Then the final line. Once he sees her decline, he won't question anything. For a moment, the room felt like it tilted sideways. Decline. She wanted Daniel to think I was losing my mind. She wanted him to believe I was weak, vulnerable, unreliable. So when the time came to take everything from me, he wouldn't question it. I sank onto the nearest chair, the note trembling in my hands. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This was character assassination. This was a calculated destruction of everything I was, and she had started it already. My chest tightened painfully. I knew then that this wasn't something I could handle alone. Not anymore. Not safely. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. But before I could stand, I felt it. A presence. A shifting of the air. A soft breath behind me. I turned slowly. Emily stood at the end of the hallway. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't wearing any mask at all. Her eyes were locked on me, and she knew I'd found it. For a moment, I couldn't move. Emily stood at the end of the hallway like a shadow carved into the dim light. Her posture still, her face unreadable, her eyes fixed on the paper trembling in my hands. Everything around me felt suddenly smaller, tighter, dangerous. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. She simply watched me, as if she were waiting to see whether I would run or break. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. I forced myself to breathe, to straighten, to fold the note calmly even though my hands shook. If she sensed fear, real fear, she would use it. She would twist it. She would devour it. So I didn't look away. You're up late, I said softly. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something colder. Something like understanding or calculation. I was getting a glass of water, she replied. Her voice was even too even, like she'd rehearsed the line. Her gaze dropped to my hands, then lifted back to my face with a slowness that made my stomach twist. So what are you doing? I held the folded paper gently. Looking for my glasses, I lied. Her eyes flickered, not with surprise, but with amusement. She took a step closer, then another. Her footsteps were soft, deliberate, almost graceful, like she was approaching a frightened animal she wanted to corner without startling. You know, she whispered, you should really be asleep. It's not good for you to stay up so late. You get confused. The word felt like a strike. Confused. It was one of the lines she planned to use against me. I felt my fist tighten around the paper. I'm not confused, I said quietly. She stopped walking. Her expression softened, but the softness was wrong, forced, as if she were peeling skin off to reveal a new face beneath it. Margaret, she murmured, why don't we sit and talk? It seems like something is bothering you. My breath steadied. Slow, careful. What would we talk about? I asked. Her eyes locked onto mine. About trust, she whispered. The word felt like a blade pressed against my throat. I slid the folded paper into my robe pocket before she could try to snatch it or accuse me of anything. Her gaze followed every movement. She saw, she knew, but she didn't react. Not yet. Instead, she gave me a slow smile, one that didn't touch her eyes. Come sit down, she said, gesturing toward the living room. We're family. We should always be honest with each other. The irony of her words felt almost suffocating, but I walked past her calmly, refusing to show how fast my heart was beating. We sat across from each other, the table between us feeling suddenly thin and fragile. Emily folded her hands neatly. Her expression was the perfect imitation of concern. You've been acting strangely, she said, withdrawn, distracted, forgetful. I felt heat crawl into my chest. So this was how she planned to start. I'm fine, I said. She tilted her head slightly. That's exactly what worries me. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were ice. She leaned closer, lowering her tone. You know, Daniel mentioned he's been worried about you. He thinks maybe you're overwhelmed. I froze. There it was, the seed she planted weeks ago, growing. She watched my reaction carefully, too carefully, her gaze sharp, assessing whether her lie had taken root deep enough to use. What did you tell him? I asked softly. She smiled. Only that I'm doing my best to help you, because I care. Her smile widened by half a breath. But you make it difficult, Margaret. Sometimes, you don't remember things correctly. My pulse thudded painfully. She was twisting reality. Slowly, skillfully, intentionally. I remember everything, I whispered. She blinked slowly, as if disappointed that I wasn't breaking the way she expected. Then her expression shifted. Subtle, chilling. Do you? She murmured. Because earlier today you forgot your keys. Yesterday you repeated a story twice. And last week you misplaced your pillbox. My stomach turned. I hadn't misplaced anything. She had moved them. She had manipulated each moment. Carefully, quietly, deliberately. And now she was weaponizing them. I forced a calm breath. I'm not losing my memory, I said. Emily leaned back, her eyes flickering with something like disappointment or irritation. You know, she whispered, if you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. We're here for you. Daniel is here for you. I met her gaze. And what exactly do you want him to think? Her smile didn't falter. Her eyes did. She looked at me a long moment before answering. I want him to be prepared, she said softly, in case something happens to you. The words felt like ice water down my spine. Prepared. Prepared for what? Prepared for who? She wasn't reassuring him. She was priming him, softening him, bending him. I swallowed hard. I don't need anyone preparing for anything, I said. Emily's eyes hardened. For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped, revealing something sharp beneath a soft exterior. A glimpse of the mind that wrote those notes. You know, Margaret, she whispered, sometimes people don't see their own decline. The words were gentle. The meaning was violence. I stood slowly. Her smile twitched. Where are you going? She asked. To bed, I replied. It's late. She stayed seated, her eyes following me with unnatural stillness. You should rest, she said softly. It's good for your clarity. The threat beneath the words was unmistakable. I walked down the hallway with my heart pounding, refusing to look back. When I reached my room, I closed the door and pressed my back against it. My hands trembled as I pulled out the folded paper. The steps she'd written, the ones I was never meant to see. Destroy my reputation. Make Daniel think I was slipping. Turn my strength into weakness. Turn my voice into confusion. Turn me into a burden. I stared at the words until they blurred. She wasn't trying to steal my home. She was trying to erase me. And now she knew I knew, which meant she wouldn't wait anymore. She wouldn't take her time. Her next move would be fast and dangerous, and I had to strike before she did, because the only thing more dangerous than a manipulative woman is a manipulative woman who feels cornered. I barely slept that night, not because I was afraid, but because my mind refused to settle. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing in the hallway, watching me with that cold stillness, as if she were already rehearsing her next move. By morning I felt hollow, not weak, emptied, cleared out, ready. When I stepped into the kitchen, Emily was already there, her back to me, humming a soft tune that made my skin crawl. She turned when she heard me enter, offering that warm smile she wore like a costume. Good morning, Margaret, she said gently. Her voice was honey, her eyes were knives. Morning, I answered. She studied my face with the same careful interest of someone examining a fragile object, deciding where to press to make it crack. Then she reached for a mug. Tea, she asked. I hesitated only a moment. Coffee, I said. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly before she set the mug down. I watched her closely. Every movement, every gesture, the way she kept glancing at me, as if waiting for me to slip, forget, stumble. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't confident anymore. She was anxious, agitated, thinner around the edges. Good. She moved to the table and sat across from me, folding her hands neatly the way she always did when she was preparing something. A lie, strategy, a performance. Margaret, she began softly, Daniel and I were talking last night. We're worried about you. The words hit my ears like a warning bell. I breathed slowly. What did you tell him? I asked. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. That you've seemed off lately. Forgetful, unsteady, not yourself. My jaw tightened. And Daniel? I asked. Her smile broadened. He trusts me. My stomach twisted. Of course he did. She had worked for months to make sure of that. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. He thinks we should look into some options, just to make sure you're okay. Options. The word echoed inside me like a threat. I forced my breath to remain even. What options? I asked. Well, her voice softened sweetly. We were thinking maybe a doctor's visit, maybe some tests, maybe a little evaluation. My blood ran cold. An evaluation, a quiet questioning of my sanity, a way to paint me as unstable, a way to isolate me, a way to strip my voice away completely. I gripped the edge of the table. I don't need an evaluation, I said. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Everyone says that at first, she whispered, but sometimes the people closest to us see things before we do. My heart pounded. She wasn't wasting time anymore. She was accelerating, pushing, because she knew the window was closing. Before I could respond, the front door opened and Daniel stepped inside. He looked exhausted, distracted, unaware of the storm brewing inside his own home. Hey, he said gently, kissing Emily's cheek before greeting me with a small smile. Emily immediately stepped beside him, her hand brushing his arm lightly as if guiding him. "Daniel," she said softly, "I already talked to her. She's willing to consider it." My chest tightened. "That's not what I said." Her expression shifted quickly, eyes widening, voice trembling perfectly. "Margaret, maybe you misunderstood." Misunderstood? Her favorite accusation. Daniel's face tightened with concern. "Mom," he said gently, "we're not attacking you. We just want to make sure you're okay." I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "I'm fine." Emily exhaled softly, placing her hand on Daniel's shoulder. "She said the same thing earlier," she murmured, "that she was fine. But I'm worried." He looked between us, torn, confused, trying to piece together two very different stories. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't a casual conversation. This wasn't a suggestion. Emily was pushing a narrative, deliberately, forcefully. She needed Daniel to believe I was slipping. She needed him to take her side. She needed him primed for whatever she planned next. And I was done letting her write the story. I stood slowly. "Daniel," I said, "I need to talk to you alone." Emily stiffened. "Why?" she asked sharply before softening her tone again. "We don't keep secrets in this house." "But we did." She did. Daniel hesitated. "It's okay," he said. "Just give us a minute." The moment he said it, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Crack, fracture, a flash of panic. But she didn't argue. She walked into the living room, sitting rigidly on the couch, listening, waiting, calculating. When she was out of sight, I took a breath and faced my son. "Daniel," I said quietly, "I need you to hear me without interruption." He frowned, concerned. "Mom, what's going on?" I met his eyes. "I found something," I whispered, "and I need you to listen before she twists it." His eyebrows lifted. "What did you find?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the note, the one outlining Emily's plans to make him believe I was mentally declining. I placed it gently in his hand. He stared at it. Then read again. His face lost color. He looked up at me slowly. "Mom," he said carefully, "what is this?" My voice trembled, but only with truth. "It's hers." He glanced back down, scanning the handwriting, the details, the steps. His breath grew faster, uneven. "When did you find this?" he asked. "Last night. And there's more." "Yes." He looked over his shoulder toward the living room where Emily sat waiting, still as a statue. "Mom," he whispered, "are you telling me Emily wrote this?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. Confusion, fear, denial, belief, all fighting behind his eyes. "Why would she?" "Because she wants everything," I said softly. "The house, the assets, you." He flinched. And then, before he could speak, we heard footsteps. Emily wasn't in the living room anymore. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes burning with something I had never seen in her before. Not sweetness, not control, not strategy, rage. "Daniel," she said quietly, "what exactly did she show you?" His breath stopped. Mine did too. Because this wasn't the polite, gentle Emily he thought he knew. This was the real one, the one she never meant him to see. And the moment she stepped closer, her mask fell completely. For a moment, none of us moved. Emily stood in the doorway like a storm barely contained, her breath shallow, her eyes locked on the note in Daniel's hand. Not the sweet eyes she used to win him over. Not the gentle eyes she used to deceive me. But eyes stripped bare, hard, sharp, exposed. "Daniel," she said again, softer this time, but with a tremor she couldn't hide. "What did she show you?" He didn't answer. He just stared at her, at the woman he thought he knew, his jaw tight, his hand gripping the paper so hard it began to shake. "This isn't real," she said quickly, stepping forward. "Whatever she showed you, it's a misunderstanding." I watched her carefully. Her voice was still soft, but the edges were fraying. Her breathing was uneven, her smile strained, panic rising through her like smoke. "Emily," Daniel said quietly, "is this your handwriting?" She froze. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She blinked once, twice. "Daniel, you know how she gets." Her voice dropped into a tremble. "She's confused. She's mixing things up." "I'm not confused," I said. Her head snapped toward me. I held my ground. Daniel looked between us again, searching for the truth in our faces. He'd always been good at reading me. But Emily, she had spent months learning how to guide his emotions. "I would never do something like this," she whispered, stepping closer to him. "You know me. You know my heart." He swallowed tightly. "I thought I did." The words hit her like a slap. Her breath hitched. Her face twisted for the smallest second, hurt, anger, disbelief all tangling together. Then she smoothed it out. She always smoothed it out. "Daniel," she said softly, "think about it. Why would I ever want to hurt your mother?" I met his eyes. "She doesn't want to hurt me," I said gently. "She wants to remove me." Emily flinched. I continued, my voice steady, strong. "She wants control of the house, of the finances, of you." And when she realized I wasn't as weak as she hoped, she started twisting things, planting ideas, trying to make you think I was slipping. Daniel's breathing grew heavier. Emily stepped forward abruptly, placing a hand on his arm. "She's lying," she said sharply, the sweetness cracking. "She's trying to turn you against me." "And what are you trying to do?" I asked quietly. She turned slowly, Her eyes narrowed. Her mask tore a little more. You've been interfering since the day we moved in, she hissed under her breath. You can't stand that he loves someone else. You can't stand not being the center of everything. Daniel stepped back, startled by the venom in her voice. Emily, he whispered. What are you saying? She looked at him, her expression crumbling into something desperate. Baby, listen to me. No, he said firmly. Answer the question. Her eyes widened. For the first time since she entered our home, she realized she no longer controlled the room. She no longer controlled him, and she certainly no longer controlled me. She looked around wildly, searching for the right words, the right tone, the right weapon. Her hand shook, her voice wavered, her eyes darted. Then she snapped. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You're believing her over me? Over your wife? Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Did you write this or not? Silence. Long, cold, final. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Not grief, not regret. Self-preservation. I did what I had to, she whispered finally. Daniel recoiled. She stepped closer, pleading now. You don't understand, she said desperately. She was always watching, always judging, always making me feel like I didn't belong. That doesn't justify this, he said quietly. Her tears stopped abruptly, and something dark passed through her expression, something that told me with chilling clarity that the woman in front of us had never been sweet, never been gentle, never been harmless. Fine, she whispered, her face going blank. Believe her, but don't blame me for protecting myself. She turned toward the hallway, moving stiffly, mechanically, like someone walking away from a fire she started. Where are you going? Daniel asked. Someplace I'll be appreciated, she said sharply, grabbing her purse. And when you realize what you've lost, don't come looking for me. But Daniel didn't follow, not even one step. She hesitated at the door, waiting for him to call out, waiting for him to chase her, waiting to win. He didn't. She finally left. The door closed behind her with a sound that felt like release. For a long moment, Daniel just stood there, shoulders shaking, breath unsteady, trying to process the truth his heart had never prepared for. I stepped closer. Daniel, I whispered. He turned to me, eyes filled with betrayal. Not at me, but at the woman he chose to love. I didn't want to believe it, he said softly. I kept thinking, maybe I was misunderstanding things. Maybe she wasn't capable of something like this. I placed a gentle hand on his arm. Kindness can be imitated, I said, but so can trust, and love, and loyalty. You saw the truth when you were ready. His eyes filled. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered. You have nothing to apologize for, I told him. We stood in the quiet house, the tension dissolving into something heavier, something like grief, something like mourning the person she pretended to be. But under it all, I felt something else, something I hadn't felt since the day I found that first note. Strength. I survived her. I protected my home. I protected my son. And I reclaimed my voice from the hands of someone who tried to erase it. When I finally sat down later that night, letting the weight lift off my chest, one question echoed through me. How many people do we let into our lives without ever seeing the truth behind their smile? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized my story wasn't just mine. It belonged to anyone who has ever trusted the wrong person, anyone who has ever ignored their instincts, anyone who has ever mistaken a mask for a face. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and support this channel. Your support helps me keep telling stories that reveal the truth behind the masks people wear.